Um, so one of the things I want to ask about, so you were based in Ireland, which is in the UK. Dyspraxia obviously is a big, it's a big, oh, how's I say this? I can't formulate my words correctly.
That's all right.
There's a lot more recognition, I suppose, sort of like in the UK, particularly in England. Um, I know that, you and I have known quite a few dyspraxics who live in England,
Mhm.
and some who are also in Ireland. Very few in America. So for me, being an American, I look at, like, the lies. I hear the stories from people over in in England. I hear their stories and stuff, and I can compare it because it's different. There's a lot of similarities, but there's also differences. What kind of, like, similarities and differences have you encountered being in Ireland? Because I'm sure there are differences, not just in accents, between Ireland, the Irish and the English, the British. So what are
Um,
some of the things that you've noticed that you maybe have picked up on, if any, between maybe your experiences over in Ireland compared to those in England and maybe America, if you care to share anything about that?
yeah, I mean, I suppose I picked up a few differences. I mean, I think probably here is easier to get a diagnosis in adulthood. I guess just based on the population, we're quite a small population in comparison to the UK. And so I suppose in one sense it is easier to get an adult diagnosis because if you have the money to go privately to pay for it, you're not waiting so long because there's not such a population. But what I have observed about the UK is that maybe they're a little bit more ahead in terms of realizing that dyspraxia still affects you in adulthood. Um, what that's one thing Ireland, just my opinion, are very, very far behind on is that once you turn 16, you have no more access to any resources. You're just left to fend for yourself. And I do kind of feel like most dyspraxia awareness weeks and things like that, it's all about the child, the child, the child, and nothing about an adulthood. But the thing is, all those wonderful children are going to be adults one day,
Hmm.
and they're going to be in the same position as myself and my friends are, with no access to real resources to help us carry on. And because when you reach adulthood, I think there are lots of problems with um, employment and driving and budgeting and things like that. Nobody prepares for that, and it's almost a sense of the second you turn 16, you're magically not dyspraxic anymore, and that's just not true. I think adults find it challenging just as much as children do, just in different ways. So I think just from what I have observed is that perhaps in my own view, the UK would be a little bit further ahead in that department. However, if you want to look between Ireland and the USA, Ireland would be probably much better ahead than
Oh
the
yeah.
USA would. And like, in fact, I didn't even realize that there was any sort of, dyspraxia foundation in the USA or anything like that. You know,
There is,
um,
but there's a lot of problems with it, and a lot of problems that sort of you kind of highlighted, as far as the focus being on children. Also, they not much focus on, well, not just adults, but just like mental health, the mental health aspect of it. And I kind of view it as sort of a faux organization. They don't really do anything to help people, in the US. They don't spread any awareness. I'm doing more to spread awareness than they ever ever do in the
yeah.
US. And I've, you know, eh, there's definitely, I mean, just think about the fact that in the US, just about nobody knows what dyspraxia is. About nobody's ever heard of it. I've never really encountered anybody who in my own country who has heard of it, unless they already have it and they just happen to be like
Yeah.
me in that sense, online or something. But in my own personal life, everybody else is just kind of like, oh, I've never heard of that. What is that? I don't, you know,
Yeah, exactly. Or
ahead of the.
I mean, it's pretty obvious, like even for the year that we're living in, and the fact that it's still confused with dyslexia, it just proves that we have such a long way to go in terms of awareness,
And like you talked about, it's like it is great that we do try to do something for the children and try to make things a little bit easier for them. But what about those of us who didn't have any support system as a child, who did not even have a diagnosis? So there's these systems in place for them now, but they didn't exist back then. And so for those of
Yeah,
us now who are struggling, it's like what support is there for us? Who is helping us? Because
yeah,
a lot of us are, I mean, even in my own life, it's like there's so many things that have set me back and have put me in precarious positions, like the one I'm in now. Difficulty finding employment, not being able to drive, doing very, just not even functioning in life, because there was nobody to help you, um,
yeah.
and
And I think employment is a big, big thing that's just so overlooked. But it's one of the most heartbreaking things about adulthood. It's so, demoralizing, and you get so disillusioned because I don't know if this is your experience, but I've lost so many jobs, or maybe, didn't pass probationary periods because I just didn't fit in with the office culture. And I can't begin to tell people who don't have dyspraxia how incredibly hard that is, because for me, I'm working 3 or 4 times harder than maybe other people would even think about, just to get basic tasks done,
well, it's so
And
hard to hold down a job even when you have them, not just because you might get fired, but just like because some jobs they don't really fire you unless you do something, really
yeah, but they push you out.
they push you out, because either they don't like you or poor performance or something. And for me, part of the difficulty for me now, of course, is the fact that, people look at your resume, they look at your job history, and they realize that you've worked at several different places and have left
Yeah.
after a couple of months. Even though I've met
Uh-huh. Yeah.
who have jumped from job to job like on a weekly basis, and somehow they're always able to find something. But for me, it's
Yeah.
like my average is usually like a few months, 2 or 3 months at a job, before I'm pushed out and basically
Yeah.
forced to quit, put in a position where I have no choice. It's either that or my sanity. um, and I've had jobs that
Yeah, well, exactly. Now I got quite lucky in that department in the sense that I work as a legal secretary at the moment, and if somebody quizzed me about why were you only here for 6 months and why were you only there for 6 months, I'd be like, and my answer is always, oh, I wanted exposure to different size law firms and different areas of law until I could decide what area I wanted to work in. And it worked for me every time. But like that was just, that's an example of my creativity right there. But but the place I'm in now, he's so good. Like, I didn't disclose dyspraxia until about 4 months into working for him, and it wasn't even a big discussion. It wasn't a big, formal thing. It was just he has a desk outside his office that I would bump into religiously 3 or 4 times a week, and he'd hear this big bang to the wall outside his office, and, you know, he'd hear me go, I'm okay, you know. So, you know, eventually I just kind of said one day, I said, oh, that's just my dyspraxia, and didn't even blink, you know, just said, yeah. You know, and I'd
You thought you were
never
in a romantic
mentioned,
comedy.
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
But
hi.
I'd
Got
never
something.
mentioned, like, but this thing, I'd never mentioned dyspraxia before. And it was like he had figured out in his own head, you know, okay, why the feck is she, you know, bumping into my desk, you know, so many times a week. But, you know, and I did work in a place a couple of years ago, and again, I hadn't disclosed dyspraxia at all. And I just happened to be having a chat with the office manager, and I said that, you know, the way, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, Brandon, people see musical notes as colors and things like that. I can't remember the term for
Oh, I
it.
think it's like synesthesia or something. I have a friend who.
That's there we go. But yeah, that's it. But I see numbers as male or female. And that's something that nobody has ever been able to understand.
Don't
But
tell
I would like look at the
that.
like I would look at the number 6 and say it's female, and the number 7 is male. And that's how I've always seen numbers. I've never not been able to look at a number and, you know, class it as a gender. And people think, what the hell? But, you know, but I think it's kind of similar in a way to seeing musical notes as colors. But, you know, but I had just we just got talking about this, and she said, oh, that'll be your dyspraxia. And I'd never ever mentioned dyspraxia in my time working there. And I just sort of, you know, I remember looking up at her and my eyes were really wide, you know. And she was like, did you think I wouldn't notice? I was like, yeah. But you know, that's kind of sad in a way, because as much as you like to think that there isn't anything noticeable, it is noticeable to some people. And, you know, I suppose, like, you know, you try so hard day to day, just kind of trying to fit in with the rest. But then there's always just going to be that little something there that, you know, you don't quite fit in.
That kind of sets you apart. Yeah. I mean, it's sad whenever it's people pick up on something, but it's the wrong thing. You know, like I've been in
Yeah.
situations where people are like, "Oh, are you autistic?" I'm like, "No." It's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you." She's like, "No, but I have dyspraxia, which there's some, you know, surface level similarities, you know, on the outside. You know, same with ADHD. Um, you know, so I get what you're saying. It's like you don't want something to seem obvious, but then something seems obvious anyway. Even though, but because people don't know what dyspraxia is, they usually jump to a different conclusion. At least that's how it is
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Like I was saying earlier on, was that, you know, they were just, you know, back in that day, they were just convinced, like, you know, it was, you know, a brain tumor or something like that, because, you know, and, you know, just dyspraxia wasn't known about. And so they kind of just thought, like, there has to be, you know, a very serious reason why she keeps falling down the stairs. And, you know, because I actually started primary school or elementary school quite late, because I didn't have the sufficient uh, muscle strength to walk upstairs. So I would have had to come up and down the stairs on my tummy if I'd have started at the same age as my other peers had started. So I actually had to start 12 months later, because I had to wait until my body was strong enough to actually be able to walk up those 3 or 4 steps with my actual legs as opposed to my tummy.
Now
You know,
look
and
where you
so
are. You know.
I know exactly, but it just goes to show you should never write anyone off, or, you know, label them in such a way that, oh, they're always going to be only go this far in life, they're only going to achieve this in life, you know, like, you know, I went from, having to crawl up the stairs on my tummy to, to creating, stories and, things like that. And I think, labels can be helpful in a way because it helps you understand, okay, well, maybe this is why things don't work as well as maybe for other people. But I think, they shouldn't they shouldn't be seen as a limit to what you can achieve
It
either.
doesn't define them. The label doesn't define the person
Yeah,
or the ability.
I think it's just a helpful. Yeah, I think the label though can be helpful in making you feel less maybe alone or something. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like
Um,
because I have never actually been diagnosed with dyspraxia. I feel like if I have,
okay.
and people have asked me like, well, what good at this point would having a diagnosis for dyspraxia have on you? And I tell them it would just be just a certainty. It would be like written in stone now. Like now it's a confirmed thing that it's not just something in my head, something that I'm just claiming. Nobody can say that, well, you're self-diagnosed, so you probably don't have it, which is a ridiculous thing that people think that, if you,
Yeah,
I mean, I get it, but at the same time, it's like some people aren't
yeah,
always wrong because they self-diagnose.
and like I'll fully admit that sometimes that that did just cross my mind, very fleetingly. Sometimes they'd be like, you know, just kind of, oh God, how can they be so certain if they don't have a diagnosis, And then I went to a talk for adults who have dyspraxia, and the lady said, if you think you have dyspraxia, you have dyspraxia. Nobody would ever choose to have this. Nobody would
Or
ever
no,
choose to have their daily life hard. And
and
I was like, actually, that makes so much sense.
also the fact that the symptoms are so specific. Like there's really nothing
Yeah,
else that could explain these things. If the symptoms, if you're, I mean, nobody would just look at them and just think, "Oh, just gonna say that's me and that's me." No, if it's something that has already affected you, it's not something you just decide that these symptoms affect you. It's just like, oh, this explains a lot. And it's like, well, if it if everything about a disorder explains all of your experiences and stuff, then odds are
yeah,
it's probably correct. It probably fits. And it's actually funny enough. I feel like I'm talking too much about myself. But it's
no,
been 10 years since I've discovered that I was dyspraxic. It was about 10 years ago as of July, which I was going to do an episode about
yeah,
that, but I just didn't have the motivation. But it's been, yeah, I realized it's been 10 years since I've discovered it. Still haven't been diagnosed, which goes to
yeah,
show how difficult it is to really get treatment or recognition about it in America. Um, but and it's
yeah.
been a year since
And
this
but
podcast.
you know, how did that make you feel psychologically when you identified with dyspraxia?
Oh, I teared up. I was,
Hmm,
it was a mixed feeling though. Of it started out, I was like I was in shock, and then I was very like happy. I just
yeah,
like I it's that moment that, oh, everything makes sense now. That moment of clarity. But then and I was so happy that you know how you get like happy and you just want to tell somebody something, you learn something and you just want to tell somebody, So
yeah,
I went and told my brother about it, and immediately he just dismissed it as me being a hypochondriac.
yeah,
And that just made me realize, oh, like, nobody cares, at the time I was 17, so I knew that I
hmm,
was basically an adult. I was at least legally an adult in Texas. um, and I was, you know, I was entering adulthood, and I knew that I felt like it was too late at that point to for any of it to matter, you know, which is not true.
Yeah.
But it feels that way sometimes. It feels like there's a cutoff point. Like you said, it's like whenever you reach a certain age, it's just like, you know, nobody wants to help you after that. It's like
Yeah.
you're on your own. And that's kind of the feeling that I got and have been dealing with ever since. It's like something that, you know, up until just you know, last year when I met you and all these other people in the dyspraxic community. Now,
Mm.
things have happened since then where they're not necessarily hold me in the best light. Some of them, many of them, um, but at the same time, it's like, well, at least there's at least some people, you know, some support and some people who
Yeah.
get it. But at the same time, it's like they can't really do much for you anyway, as far as, you know, accommodations and stuff like that. Because you're not in
Mm.
school anymore, you know, it's this is the real world, and
Yeah. Yeah.
employers don't really have like a special ed department or, you know, so it's, yeah,
Yeah. And I think like that's something that I'd love to establish over here is support for, well, not only dyspraxic people experiencing job loss or, you know, failed probationary periods, but also actually providing knowledge to employers, you know, just explaining exactly what it's about and exactly how exhausting it can be and things like that, and try to create this you know, try and create this, I suppose, support system for both employers and employees. And yeah, I mean, it's probably just a fantasy that that could ever happen, but you know, I think if I could find a way to make that work, I absolutely would, because I think it's so important. And
absolutely.
I think,
Having something here.
you know, hmm, like I do feel probably my current employer is probably the only employer who I would, you know, trust, I guess, if you want, for want of a better term, with the information that I am dyspraxic, because in my other experiences of disclosure, um, they, you know, magically started to look for ways to let you go within a couple of weeks of you telling them, you know.
Oh, yes. Or you tell them at the job interview and they don't hire you at all, which has been pretty much been
Yeah,
every time that I've disclosed dyspraxia in a job interview, I've never gotten the job. And every time
yeah,
that I have
same.
gotten the job, I never told them until I started working there.
Yeah, and you know, it's so demotivating, and
And it's a
it's
form of
so hard. This
ableism
is,
that they can't, like, they can back out of it. They can claim, "Oh, no, it's not ableism, like, we just thought someone else was better for the," but it totally is. I mean, uh, I know it seems, you know, kind of, I don't know, extreme to say that, but I am fully convinced that that is the reason why they're not hiring you, is because of
yeah,
that, you know, because they don't wanna hire somebody in your condition. At least
yeah.
yeah, that's how I feel.
No, I agree. I think, you know, that's all, you know, just been my experience in the past is, you know, you disclose dyspraxia and they start looking, you know, for ways to kind of pull you up on things that they wouldn't pull up anyone else on, as a way to nearly push you out, because they can't actually let you go for this, you know, for disability, because, you know, that's not legal. But they, you know, they make your life as difficult as possible, that you actually just say, oh, here, you know, I'm
Yeah,
done.
and you can't qualify for like getting disability payments or anything like that, so you can just work a part-time job or something like that. At least not in here over here. Um, you know, because dyspraxia is not recognized officially as like a disability where you can get on like a disability program or anything. So it's like you're in the same position as anybody else where you need a full-time job to support yourself. And you know, I've never been in a position where I could be like fully independent in that way, because it's hard to
Yeah.
find a job, it's hard to maintain a job. there's no like government assistance or anything like that to help you financially. So it's like you're in a rough situation, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just one of the, I think, something that's quite overlooked for an adult. And, that's why I think just right across the board, there has to be a massive improvement in the resources available to adults, even down to affordable counseling and psychotherapy. Because I would think that the majority of people with dyspraxia experience low self-esteem. And if you're having trouble with employment, or at least securing employment that pays well, you can't afford to have the therapy that you probably so badly need from having low self-esteem issues.
Absolutely. So before we conclude this, I just want to say again, this is Dyspraxia Awareness Week. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of what the community has meant to you. I know that the community is kind of a simplistic kind of thing because it isn't like one little tight knit kind of thing. It's kind of like it's kind of a generalization to say community, but the kind of associations that you've had with other dyspraxics. How old, like, I don't want to say how old, but at what point did you first start meeting people who kind of shared your condition, and when did you kind of become involved with sort of like dyspraxic kind of what's the word,
I mean,
community type
to
stuff?
be perfectly honest, like all through school, I mean, I was one of the only students in secondary school to have dyspraxia. I was certainly, the only one in primary school with dyspraxia. So I never really had anybody to identify with. And it was only just, I think maybe it was 2015, 2016 that I joined a dyspraxia support group in Ireland, which later became Dyspraxia Parent Support Group. And then I started personal training with Ronan, and it was only through training with Ronan that I actually got established, talking to other adults with dyspraxia, because I started up my blog. And then I didn't really think much of it. And I got talking to a couple of people in late 2019. And then I went over to Birmingham for the Dyspraxia Adult Conference, which was actually, it was really interesting. I got to meet a few lovely people that I'm still friends with, like, today, just from having met them that one time. And that was really the first experience I had of a dyspraxia, community. And then I didn't really think much more of that then until we the whole world went into lockdown at the same time, and all of a sudden we had to communicate virtually, and I met so many other people like yourself and others, and for the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of that way for all of us. We would have
Yeah.
sort of meetings like every week or a couple of times a week through Zoom.
Yeah.
And we all just kind of got to know each other, and so many different personalities would come out. Everyone had different backgrounds, different interests and stuff, but we all had these things that kind of bonded us together and connected us.
Absolutely. And I think, it was some massive, massive help through the first lockdown, because I know you're saying that Texas wasn't as strict, but over in Ireland, you were not allowed to go beyond 2 kilometers of your house, and that was it. You were fined, by the police, or, cops, or whatever you call them, if you went further than 2 kilometers. And here's me thinking, I have no concept of what 2 kilometers looks like, or 2 meters distance looks like, and things like
We're
that.
on the metric
But
system, so I definitely don't.
yeah,
I don't have the
but
metric system.
but
Whatever we are, I don't even know.
like I wouldn't have a breeze what inches, feet, anything like
We
that looks
measure
like.
in
I wouldn't have
football
it.
fields.
Yeah, but I think as well, though, as a dyspraxic, I naturally rely heavily on routine. So my routine was getting up at 6:37 a.m. I have it that specific. My alarm each morning was set for 6:37 a.m. Straightening my hair, getting dressed for work, and then all of a sudden, just at the snap of a finger, that was all taken. And it was just completely, not only was I not going to work, but I couldn't go beyond 2 meters from my house. And you were just being quizzed by guards if you went anywhere beyond that. And it was completely taking away every single bit of routine. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying only for dyspraxics, but I'm just talking on my own experience as someone who relies so heavily on routine. I wouldn't have gotten through that without those routinely Zoom meetings and listening to other dyspraxics saying that they were struggling with that as well. And I honestly, that was my very first, I suppose, introduction to a dyspraxic community. And the beauty of meeting through Zoom is that you can be having a Zoom meeting with people from 5 or 6 different time zones. And, like you and I are talking right now, we're able to communicate in real time, even though you're about 6 hours behind me.
And don't let me keep you up too late.
But it was just so special, and it really made lockdown so much easier, because there are only so many programs on Disney Plus you can watch without kind of going, oh, what to do now, and but just to know that when everything is so up in the air and so out of the ordinary, to know that, okay, on a Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m., I'm going to log on to this, have my routine. And it was just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But it just kind of made you feel like I belong somewhere, even though we're all in different countries and all in different time zones. I belong, and every single one of these people identify with me, and I identify with them.
Yeah,
and I just,
to me,
incredible.
everybody, even just like you would be telling stories that if you told any like neurotypical person these stories, they would just look at you like, huh? And there's things that you don't even have to explain it, and everybody there would be like, nodding their head like, yep, same with me. Right, cheerio. No, they wouldn't say that. I'd be like, yeehaw. We're all stereotypes. You'd be like, my lucky turn.
But it's like, I remember on one of the very first Zooms that I joined, and there was this lady who had dyspraxia who had just learned to fly a plane. And I'm not joking, I broke out in a cold sweat with anxiety, thinking, I'm sorry, but if I got on a plane and, if I heard that, the pilot had dyspraxia, I would be absolutely, petrified, But it just goes to show that you've been conditioned to learn that you're not suited to certain careers or professions,
or even hobbies, because there's always factors, that could prevent you from this or that. But if you want something, dyspraxia is not going to prevent it. If you want to pursue something, even if it's something like in my case, acting and stuff, and it's hard for anybody to just pursue that professionally, but just to do it as like in community theater, and to receive as much praise as I have doing, I'm modest enough to, I can't really just say, oh yeah, I'm a fantastic actor, but having been told by many people that, you know, of my talents and what I've been able to do, and to have been able to play so many different roles and to do things that I never really would have thought that I'd be able to, like doing a tango in a play.
Yeah.
You know, I never thought that I would be able to do a tango or a waltz or whatever, you know, or a sword fight. Um, but I have, you know, I've been able to do it beyond my
Yeah.
own expectations.
Yeah. It's quite you know, and it's a lovely moment when that happens, when you're able to exceed your own expectations of yourself because you've read some information on in a book or on a website that you'll never be able to do what you just achieved. You know, it's a lovely moment, you know. And in fact, there's only one thing in a book that I've actually agreed with in terms of my own experiences is driving. You know, I gave it a go, but it just really, really wasn't my thing.
Many dyspraxics do drive. I've met, you know, many in the group and people who they do drive
Yeah,
all the time. But I think for some, like me and you, like I
yeah,
haven't even attempted to drive since I was like 15, and I crashed my
yeah,
friend's car into a pole. So that kind of put me off, you know. And with my difficulties with depth perception and things, I'm just
yeah,
not sure that that's just even
yeah.
an option, you know.
I remember like in secondary school, again, I'm not sure we call it like maybe what comes after elementary school. I don't know.
Well, there's junior high and then there's high school. So like you could call it
It
secondary.
was either junior high or high school, but we had these aptitude tests, and you know, so there was English, math, um, you know, things like that. So you know, I scored in the 98th and 99th percentile for English and maths. And then there was the abstract reasoning section, which is a lot of it involves, you know, visual perception, I guess, and, you know, abstract reasoning. So it was just really funny that the graph they showed me, it was, you know, it was a bar chart. So it was 98, 99, and then abstract reasoning was 3. You know, so I really have difficulties with visual perception and you know thinking outside the box. I guess if you really want to get down to it, um, you know. But it was just so funny to see it documented in the bar chart. You know that I was a whole 93 percentiles lower in abstract reasoning than I was in math and English. You know, and things like that. You know, and it was quite interesting because it mirrored when I was initially tested for dyspraxia when I was 11, was that absolutely no problem at all with reading comprehension or things like that. But when it came to, I remember distinctly one of the tests I had, like say for example, there was the word king, and then there were empty boxes, but that they had particular shapes. So you had to match the word to the correct box that it would fit based on the shape. I'm, you know, there's really no clear way I can explain that, but I guess if you just want to think about it very simply, you know, for the letter king, you know, there would be a tall part of the box, and then it would kind of be straight, and then it would kind of curve at the bottom and, you know, come back around. So you could write the word K, or write the letter K and then IN in the straight line part, and then the G where it loops around to the bottom. You know, if that makes sense.
Right.
Maybe I'm not really explaining that well, but I know exactly what I'm trying to visualize. But, you know, and like that, I scored, you know, I remember them saying that the average score for visual perception challenges for people of my age group was 50 and above, which means that, you know, most people with dyspraxia would still be able to identify 50% correctly. whatever it was, the task I being asked, I scored 3. So, I would have great difficulty in that, in that area. But
I probably would too, because I
that,
don't even know what you're talking about. I'm trying
yeah,
to
I'm really not,
like.
I'm really not describing it very well.
I don't know if that's
But
the problem, but I'm just
yeah, but I mean, I think it's probably easier if I private message you, like, a little
like a picture.
visual of what yeah.
Like I
But,
would need
but
visual representation. People listening, I don't know, maybe they can visualize it, but that's always been a difficult thing for me. When somebody describes something, it's hard for me to visualize it sometimes.
yeah, I mean, it was always a challenge in school, when your teacher was trying to trick you into, meditation and things like that. It was like, and close your eyes and visualize yourself on a beach and who's there. And I was like, what? I can't see anything.
Is it an East Coast beach or a West Coast beach?
Yeah, exactly. I need more details. Yeah. But yeah, it's just funny, you learn as you go along. But one thing that never changed for me, like, I will always have problems, dissecting information from a diagram. I just can't, my brain can't work it out. But give me, an algebra equation, I get it in a couple of seconds, so.
Oh, not me. One of the things I have difficulty is, like whenever you are looking for, like, say there's a shelf, like you're at the store, and there's like a
Yeah.
shelf of, like, say spices or something. So there's a lot of different little bottles and stuff, and you're looking for something in particular, and you just can't see it, or where somebody's like pointing at something that you're looking for, and like you still, even though they're pointing right at you, like you still can't see it. You just get like your navigation
Yeah.
so poor. Like I'm so bad about that. It's so embarrassing when that happens.
I know but like, I remember people used to say, people say, oh, there's Orion's belt, or there's, Ursa Minor and things like that, or there's the, whatever constellation, and I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, you just pretend. You're just like, oh,
not a clue.
oh, interesting.
Oh, I definitely see that. You're not looking the right direction. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, but yeah, things like that, I'd never be able to focus to see, like, these constellations, or things like that other people are pointing out to me. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, a star looks like a star to me.
Right.
How are you possibly picking out 7 stars and saying, this is
It's like they're trying to connect things and stuff like that.
yeah, that just makes no sense to me.
So going back to like the sort of like the community stuff, I don't know what else. I've been kind of out of the loop. I don't know what's really going on, if anybody's doing anything. I know that, I mean, there's been some kind of some kind of stuff going, that some bad blood between some people during the group, myself included, which I know you're not involved in any of that, of course. But like, I don't know how much camaraderie is still going on, or how much, but if there's any events going on, anybody's planning on anything. Are you doing anything specifically for Dyspraxia Awareness Week, or is it just kind of like whatever, another week?
I mean, you see, I think, in certainly in the UK, it would be a lot, how do I say, louder than Ireland. It would be a lot better known about in the UK than it would be in Ireland. And so Ireland's Dyspraxia Awareness Week is actually a month later than the UK. Yeah. And the reason is that October is Dyslexia Awareness Month, and so dyslexia and dyspraxia are so often confused with each other. Well, more often than not, it's dyspraxia is confused with dyslexia. So, it's done that way purposely to avoid them being, you know,
Conflated.
linked together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, my dyspraxia or not my dyspraxia awareness week, but Ireland's dyspraxia awareness week is the last week of November.
It kind of
so
coincide with your graduation in a way.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, my graduation's the 12th of November, and our Dyspraxia Awareness Week starts 22nd of November. So it is lovely timing in a way, because obviously this time last year, I was only a couple of months into the course, not sure if I would even pass it. And now I'll have just graduated when the Irish Dyspraxia Awareness Week comes out. So it'll be quite a special year, I guess. It'll be the first year that I feel I've achieved something, and have something to show for it,
Right. And in America, I don't think there even is a Dyspraxia Awareness Month or week or whatever. So I just kind of like go by whatever I see, which I remember last year I had a few people interviewing. I probably won't have very many this week or this year. But yeah, I mean, it's what else is there to say about that? I wish that we could do more to spread awareness or make, whether it's your Dyspraxia Awareness Week or the one that's
Yeah,
this week
I do kind of feel like, with the very best of intentions, that you're determined that every passing year is going to be bigger and better and more successful in terms of raising awareness. But it does seem like sometimes, unless you have a celebrity or something talking about it, you do sort of think, is anybody really getting anything from this? Only an opportunity for dyspraxics just to share their story,
Yeah.
Is anybody really interested? Because as far as quite a few people are concerned, dyspraxia is not a big deal, and it's purely an inability to be able to draw anything other than a stick man and art.
Right.
Things like that. So but I think definitely more needs to be done, I guess, in terms of Dyspraxia Awareness Week, and bring fresh faces to it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like there was a lot more going on last year, and then of course it seemed like right at the same time there was some sort of inner conflicts with people, which unfortunately I got dragged into, and it seems like there hasn't been as much of a closeness. There's not really very many of these meetings that we used to go to, which I think is very sad. I really would like and hope that in the future people can sort of get together more and have that sort of bond that we did last year, and we could all kind of like celebrate it together and support one another and use it as an occasion to further our our intentions, our whatever you want to call it. I can't think of the word. Our endeavor.
I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
So before I let you go, is there any other things that you would like to sorry, I can't think of the words, to plug or to promote? I know you mentioned you had written a children's book. If there's anything you want to say about that.
I've written 3 children's books, and the proceeds from each book went to raise money for children who have cancer and other terminal illnesses. And I am just on my 4th children's book, which is going to be about the topic of consent and body autonomy. And I think that's quite important. Not even obviously in terms of the more serious, I suppose, connotations of consent and body autonomy. I think even as a dyspraxic person, and you have sensory challenges, and you really don't like hugs and things like that, but you're taught that it's rude to not hug someone like your auntie or your uncle,
Right.
or you know,
Well, I do,
your
but
grandparents,
I
something.
understand some people don't. um,
Yeah, but
but not from a
but yeah.
stranger.
So, no, but I mean, it's just more like, even for myself, since starting writing the book, I'm very, very conscious of my own nieces and nephews. And sometimes I nearly, kind of say, oh, give me a hug. And then I stop myself because I'm like, if they really wanted to hug you, they would have done it by now,
Right.
and things like that. And it's like, you don't need to hug them to show them, that you love them. But it's more just kind of as well thinking from a sensory point of view that, you know, sometimes hugs aren't comfortable and things like that. And so it could easily help, someone in the dyspraxic community, like a younger member of the dyspraxic community, in terms of sensory challenges, and just saying, well, actually, if I don't feel, comfortable in a sensory way from, a hug or whatever, it's okay to say no. I'm not being rude by saying I don't want to hug, and things like that.
Right. It's always good to check, make sure that it's something, because people have different comfort levels, which I think people,
Yeah.
especially now with COVID, is like people are, they're showing less affection, and it could be a positive and a negative thing, just depending on who you are.
Yeah, I mean, myself, I mean, I crave deep pressure a lot, and I guess, so for me, there's nothing, I love a big, bear hug. I do love, big cuddles and stuff like that. Um, but I guess, like, for me, what I'm learning is, okay, so I might not ask my nieces and nephews for a hug, because I want to respect their own sort of decisions, but I'm still shown their latest dolly, still shown their latest game, their latest book, their newest dolly. They're
Mhm.
not they're not stopping me from entering their world just because, I've taken a step back, in that sense, and respecting their own personal space. Um, but yeah, it's just kind of an interesting bit of learning for myself, because I think, I don't know about you, but I would have a terrible concept of personal space. Like, maybe it's a visual perception thing as well. I'm very conscious that, maybe I'm not the best for giving people personal space. Like, I'll be right, right beside them, but maybe without intending to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I know what you mean. I've been in similar situations as well. It's tough to be aware sometimes. So what are the titles of this one and perhaps the other three that you've written in the past? And I'll
Yeah.
definitely put
So
it, if you have a somewhere online that people can purchase them, I'll be happy to put that in the description as well.
thank you. No, the current one that I'm working on is called The Very Friendly Alien. And the proceeds are going to go to the sexual assault unit in the children's hospital, the main children's hospital here in Ireland. Um, the other three books are called The Princess Who Lost Her Manners, Jack's Big Adventure, and Santa Wipe Your Feet.
I
And
like that one.
yeah, yeah, no, it's, and sometimes, it's been quite a while since I wrote the first three, and sometimes I'll kind of go back and look at them and kind of go, was that me writing it? You just can't make the connection to the words on your page to your actual brain. You can't. It was like reading my college thesis. I was like, oh, I didn't write that, did I?
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
Oh, I feel that way too about looking back at my old writing. And if you have any excerpts that you would like me to read on here in the future, then I'm happy to do that as well.
yes, definitely. I mean, I don't actually keep copies of my own books, but maybe I should for one of these days. Just, nice to have, like, on the days that, because as a dyspraxic, you do naturally have the days where you think, oh, I'm not achieving anything, or,
Oh yeah.
so it'd be nice to have a visual reminder. Well, actually, yeah, you have.
It's just good to have a physical copy of something that you made and wrote. Are there illustrations in the books?
Yeah.
Oh, who did the
Yeah.
illustrations?
So for the first one, it was a guy called Joseph O'Brien, and the other two, it was a lovely girl called Siobhan, and she was just, she was incredible, just so efficient at doing the illustrations. And for me, a big problem with me, as we already discussed, was the abstract reasoning and anything to do with weight or measurements and things like that just passes over my head. So my friend Paul, he's the middleman to answer all of those complicated questions, like how many inches of a bleed do I need to leave for the illustrations, and I'm like, what? Just all those things that would not have a concept of, I would just throw over to my friend Paul. I do not have any concept of measurements and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be happy to put links to those in the description. They sound interesting. I'd love to read them at some time. Any other things going on that you want to share? Any things coming up? You promoting maybe some of the things you might be doing as far as the training, where they might be able to find you if people would like to
Yeah.
secure.
I have a Facebook page called Personal Training with Dyspraxia, and then on Instagram, I'm SGPT No Barriers Training, which sounds like a mouthful, and it is. But I mean, No Barriers Training is my tagline or my logo, because I think it's when I say it doesn't matter to me, I think what I mean when I say it. It's just whether you have autism, Asperger's, dyspraxia, dyslexia, I'm still going to train you in the way that I would train anyone else, and I'm still going to give you the same amount of time that I would to anybody else, and I'm never going to make you feel like less. I'm just going to show you a different way to achieve things, even if it's in a different way than what people without a learning difficulty would.
Well, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
I think that's great. I will leave you with the final word, but I want to make one little announcement. There is a possibility for me, if I can plug something, and for me, there is a possibility that I may be publishing a collection of I would call them lyricisms. I've been putting together a compilation of songs that I've written in the past, lyrics. I've kind of converted them more in the style of like a poetry, but they're not really written as poems, so it's kind of weird for me to call them like a poetry collection, because I always wrote them to be like sort of musical. But I am currently putting that together, and I think that there's a strong possibility it might get published. So I will keep updates on that, but I just wanted to kind of put it out there that that's kind of something that that may be happening. I might be coming out with in the future, and they're going to be all about different things. There's a couple in there I've read actually on here before, but a couple of them are about dyspraxia, but most of them they're not so much. Some of them are fictional stories. Some of them are introspective that maybe dyspraxics can still relate to anyway. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to throw that out there and just make that announcement while I'm here.
Oh, well, that sounds really interesting, and you should absolutely just let me know when that's all finished, and I'd love to read it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, I'd be happy to. So I think that's about it. We could talk forever about about this, and I'll be happy to have you on again. So I'm gonna let you have the final word, and thanks to everybody that was listening today. Sorry about my kind of fumbling over my words. It has been a little while since I've done one of these. But thank you all for taking your time, and hope that this conversation has been beneficial to you. And I'll leave the rest to Sophie.
To me. Well, just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to hear my story and for being so patient. For, I suppose everyone who's listening has just gotten an insight into how overactive my brain can be and how hard it can be to stick to one topic for any amount of time. But the beauty, I guess, of talking to someone else who has dyspraxia is, they have a lot of patience, and I guess a deeper appreciation of why I am like that, and you didn't make, if you did have a problem with me jumping so much, you certainly didn't make it obvious, and it just means a lot, I guess.
Well, like I said, I'm the same exact way.
Yeah. No, but I've really enjoyed popping on, and I think the social media has so much criticism, but I think this is one of the ways where a massive positive can come out of it, because we're in two different time zones yet communicating in real time. I think to find someone you identify with on the other side of the pond, and to know that you're not alone, is a huge comfort. And I just think, keep up the great work.
Thank you. Very wonderful. Well, thank you once again, and everybody, enjoy the rest of your days, and enjoy Dyspraxia Awareness Week. And if you're in Ireland, well, you have to wait another month, but I hope you enjoy it then too. Thank you.
Thank you.